Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. When it comes to managing data in a sensitive setting, the military has a tough job. How do you manage access to restricted information without creating the potential for breaches? On top of that, how do you do it when attempting to connect different branches of the military and potentially in the heat of battle? That was a question explored in a recent Defense News webcast, Balancing Data Access and Security. Here's part of the conversation.
I would want to know if you can walk us through what the biggest challenge is to successfully collecting, analyzing, and then securing vast quantities of data, which is something that obviously you're involved heavily in.
Yeah, so the challenges are really the different types of data for the dependent on the system that you're getting the data from. So sometimes I think people don't realize that all of the systems that we leverage every day, be it in our personal or professional lives, has data connected to it. So it goes beyond the standard, office applications that we use, in either Google or 365, right? So that's data creation there, records creation, and then if you have any other kind of system that we access for our day-to-day jobs, like financial systems or websites, Facebook, whatever we're accessing, right? We have to be able to maintain and control that data. So the vastness and the scope of that data is a large challenge. The associated cost of maintaining that data, depending on how much you need to keep, is a big challenge as well. And I think the different data types, right? So there's not a standard data format, so different systems store things in different manners.
Inherent in that, too, is sort of a balance. One, securing the data, protecting it, while also making sure that it's accessible to users who need to use it. I'm wondering if you can go into how best to balance those two things and in the work that you do.
Right, so a lot of that is access control, right? So you have to think about the different audiences that you want to be able to access your data. And in processes like Zero Trust, it's default to deny, right? So you go down a path of denying people access to the data, and then make sure you have access control lists and the right tooling to be able to protect the data. And then you also have to think about the different people who you want to access the data and for what and why, right? So insider threat, for example, is something that needs to be considered. The number of administrators that have access to these systems and whether they should or not need to know when you think about things like classification is also something. And then so I think the perception that there's a lot of data, then the access control to that data, and then making sure you don't deny your user base access to the data is really the balancing act that I think we're faced with as it pertains to data.
I'm wondering if we can return to the topic of balance, making sure that you're striking the right balance in terms of access between users you want there versus those who aren't there, and then making sure that they can't move laterally within the system once they get there, given the presumption of infiltration. Tell me how this is different versus somebody in the Pentagon in Arlington versus somebody who is out in the field, whether it's in Mogadishu or somewhere else.
Right, so I think the first place you start, which we haven't mentioned up until this point, but is a key part of the pillar discussion that I started, which is identity, right? So you have to understand who your people are, and you have to have systems that provide that access. And so access-based control really depends on understanding who your people are, and location adds another variable that can be tailored towards, right? If you want to further restrict access or further grant access. So the systems that are being deployed at this point, have factors that are configurable that allow you to enable access or disable access. For example, GPS location, right? So you can have situations where if somebody's accessing your network from Russia at 3 in the morning, you don't understand why. You could set policy that limits that access, right? And until you validate who that user is and what they're accessing from, and whether that makes sense or not. So that's a key part is identity. The other part is, we talked about visualization. So there's cyber defenders across industry and across the DoD that's looking at all these access points. So every time there's a denial, or every time there's an access that looks a little fishy, right? There's operators that are actioning those alerts based on field conditions and either blocking or allowing access in real time. Like that's something that happens in every business and every IT, whether it's SOC ops or CSSP ops is what DISA calls it.